I'm Wendy. Sitting at this table, looking at the gold pen my mother slid towards me, I'm transported back to that fateful dinner. The pen stopped against my plate, like a small, accusing finger. Across the room, 3 lawyers I'd never met sat with their briefcases open, papers fanned out under the warm, yellow light that my mother always kept too dim. My father refused to meet my eyes, and my sister, Lily, was smiling that cold, calculating smile she reserved for deals. My mother folded her hands, leaned in, and said the words she'd been rehearsing all week, "Sign this or you'll regret it." I stared at that pen for what felt like an eternity. Instead of reaching for it, I uttered the words I'd been holding back all night. And just like that, the room emptied, as if someone had pulled the plug. But to understand how I ended up here, across from these strangers with a document in front of me, we have to go back. I run a small accounting firm in Riverdale, a cozy town with a big heart, or so I thought. I've built my business client by client over the past decade. I'm good with numbers, they're honest, they don't lie. Every morning starts the same, coffee with my husband, Jake, the radio playing softly in the background, and the smell of ink and old paper filling the air. Jake is the rock in my life, a steady presence that my family has never quite understood. They're always chasing the next big thing, the flashy and the exciting, while Jake is content with the simple, the reliable. One Tuesday, my phone rang, and my mother's name lit up the screen. My stomach dropped before my brain even registered what was happening. I let it ring twice, a small act of rebellion that no one could see. Then, I answered, because that's what I've always done, put my family first, no matter what. "Darling," my mother said, her voice laced with that false sweetness she used when she wanted something. "I have the most wonderful news. It's about Lily." And just like that, the carefully constructed life I'd built started to crumble. Lily was engaged to Alexander Blackwood, a scion of the wealthy Blackwood family. They owned half the town and had their name engraved on every important building. My mother said his name slowly, as if it were a precious gem. I told her I was happy for Lily, and I was, but I knew that this news came with a price. "We're going to do this right," my mother said. "A real, grand wedding. Something our family can be proud of." I immediately noticed the word "we." In our family, we always meant me. "How much are we talking about?" I asked. She laughed, delighted that I'd asked. "Around $50,000, give or take. The Blackwoods are doing their part, but the bride's family traditionally covers the rest." I sat there, stunned. $50,000 was more than my parents had ever made in a single year. I knew, without her having to say it, that this was my responsibility. "Mom," I started, but her voice cooled instantly. "Family doesn't keep score," she said, the sentence she'd used on me since I was a teenager. Every time she said it, it meant one thing: pay up. I told her I needed to think. She heard a yes, as she always did, and hung up, already planning the flowers. I set the phone down and stared at it, feeling a sense of dread wash over me. Jake didn't say a word. He just refilled my coffee, a silent gesture of support. I'd been the family's safety net for as long as I could remember. When I was 17, my father's business hit a rough patch. The electricity bill was overdue, and my mother was in tears at the kitchen table. Lily, who was 9 at the time, was blissfully unaware, watching cartoons in the next room. I had a part-time job at the local bookstore, and I'd saved up $300 for a new laptop. Without thinking, I gave it to my mother. The look of relief on her face was like a drug, and I became addicted to the feeling of being needed. Over the years, I'd paid for car repairs, medical bills, and Lily's college tuition. I told myself it was love, that I was helping my family. But as the bills got bigger, I started to realize that I was being taken advantage of. There was one thing my family didn't know about me. A year ago, Jake and I got married at the courthouse, with just 2 witnesses and a simple lunch at a diner afterward. We didn't tell my family because I knew they'd judge Jake based on his income and social status. They'd done it before with my ex-boyfriend, and I wasn't going to subject Jake to that. Jake understood. He came from a family that showed love through actions, not words. He never pressured me to tell my family about our marriage. He just said, "When you're ready, I'll be by your side." After that phone call, Jake sat across from me at the kitchen table and asked what I wanted to do. "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me just wants to write the check and make it go away." He nodded slowly. "Or you could find out what the money is really for," he said. I almost laughed. I'm an accountant, I always keep track of the money. But I'd never really questioned my family's motives. A few days later, my mother invited me over for what she called a wedding planning coffee. I drove to my parents' house, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The house looked the same as always, a beautiful facade hiding the financial troubles beneath. When I arrived, Lily was there, spreading out brochures and price lists on the dining table. Venues, caterers, and florists, it was all there. My mother had a notebook with a long list of numbers, and I could see from across the room that the total was circled twice. "There she is," my mother said, beaming. "Sit down, dear. We saved you the best seat." The best seat was the one where they could pressure me the most. Lily slid a brochure towards me without looking up. "The Elmwood Manor is perfect for the wedding. The Blackwoods have had events there before." She said the name like it was a password to a secret club. I looked at the numbers on my mother's notebook. $52,500. "That's more than $50,000, I said. My mother waved her hand dismissively. "Buffers. You always taught us about buffers." They were trying to make it seem so simple, so reasonable. They weren't just asking me for money, they were making me the bank, the planner, and the scapegoat. Lily looked at me, her eyes bright and expectant. "You don't mind, do you? You don't have any kids yet. What else are you saving for?" The room fell silent. My father, who was standing by the window, said nothing. I felt the old urge to say yes, to give in. But for the first time in my life, I held back. "Let me look at the numbers," I said. "I'll get back to you by the end of the week." My mother smiled, thinking I'd already agreed. Lily went back to her brochures, convinced that the problem was solved. On the drive home, I felt a deep sense of shame. I'd built my career on being honest and transparent with my clients, but I couldn't even be honest with my own family. When I got home, Jake was sitting at the table, reading glasses on, marking up a contract. He looked at my face and set down his pen. "What did you say?" he asked. "I said I'd think about it," I replied. He didn't sigh or lecture me. He just nodded. "Wendy, you've been thinking about this for years. What you haven't done is make a decision." He was right. I'd been avoiding this moment for as long as I could remember. Every time the phone rang, I knew it was going to be another request for money. I'd been giving in slowly, bit by bit, until I was on the verge of breaking. "If I say no," I said, "they'll make my life a living hell. My mother will tell everyone, and I'll be the selfish one who ruined Lily's wedding." Jake nodded. "Probably. But if you say yes, it'll never end. There will always be something else." I sat there, thinking about his words. He reached across the table and took my hand. "You already know what you have to do. You just need to find the courage to do it." On Saturday morning, I called my mother. I knew that mornings were when I was the bravest. She answered on the first ring. "Darling, perfect timing. I'm on the phone with the caterer." "Mom," I said, my voice steady. "I can't fund the wedding. I'm happy to give a gift, like any normal person would, but I can't take on $50,000. The line went dead silent. I could hear the ticking of the clock in her kitchen. "It's your sister's wedding," she finally said. "I know," I replied. "But this isn't fair to me." There was a rustling on the other end of the line, and then Lily was on the phone. "Are you serious? You're really going to do this to me? You have all that money, and you're choosing to embarrass me in front of the Blackwood family. I took a deep breath. Lily, I'm not doing this to you. I'm just being honest. I can't afford it. She hung up on me. My mother didn't call back, and the silence that followed was deafening. I knew it was a tactic, a way to make me feel guilty. But this time, I wasn't going to give in. Over the next few days, the pressure started to mount. My aunt called to say she was worried about me, but I knew it was just a way to guilt trip me. My cousin texted me a long paragraph about how family comes first. And someone from the church left a voicemail about the importance of unity. I sat at my desk, looking at the messages. I realized that something wasn't right. Why were they all so eager to get me to pay? Why was there such a sense of urgency? I started to dig deeper into my parents' finances. I'd done their taxes for years, so I thought I knew everything. But as I looked through the old files, I noticed something strange. A year and a half ago, they'd refinanced the house. My mother had told me it was to get a lower interest rate, but when I looked closer, I realized that they'd actually taken out a large sum of money. I sat back in my chair, stunned. My parents, who couldn't afford a wedding, had quietly borrowed against their only asset. And I had no idea where the money had gone. There were no new cars, no home improvements, no vacations. It was as if the money had vanished into thin air. I started a spreadsheet, trying to track their income and expenses. A large gap opened up in the middle of the page, a hole of tens of thousands of dollars that I couldn't explain. My father called me the next day. His voice was warm and rehearsed. Wendy, your mother and I feel terrible about how things went. We don't want money to come between us. Family doesn't keep score. I listened, my mind racing. Then he said, tax season is coming. I'm going to do a family filing this year. Can you send me your social security number and that old W-9 form? My alarm bells went off. My father had never done his own taxes correctly in his life. I'd been his accountant for years. There was no reason for him to need my social security number. Why do you need my SSN? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. He paused. You know how these things are. The accountant asked for it. I knew he was lying. I told him to send me whatever the accountant needed, and I'd handle my own portion. He didn't push, which worried me even more. As soon as I hung up, I called the credit bureaus and froze my credit reports. I knew that there was only one reason my father would ask for my social security number. He wanted to put my name on something. That night, I told Jake everything. He listened, his face serious. Wendy, what you're describing is called undue influence. When it happens within a family, the law takes it very seriously. He was right. I'd been so focused on being a good daughter that I'd let my family take advantage of me. But now, I was going to fight back. A few days later, I got a call from a bank. They were verifying a joint loan application with my name on it. I was shocked. I hadn't applied for any loans. I spoke to the woman on the phone, trying to stay calm. She told me that the application was almost approved, and they just needed my signature. I told her that I never authorized the application and that I wanted it frozen. She explained that because it was a joint application, I couldn't cancel it over the phone. I'd have to come in person and have the other borrower notified. I hung up the phone, feeling helpless. I knew that my family was trying to trap me. But I wasn't going to let them. I needed to see the loan application for myself. I knew where my father kept his important documents in the old filing cabinet in his study. I couldn't just demand to see it, they'd know I was onto them. So, I came up with a plan. I called my mother and told her that I'd thought it over and that I wanted to help in a smaller way. She was overjoyed. I knew you'd come around, dear. Come over on Thursday. We can talk more then. Thursday was perfect. My father had a doctor's appointment out of town that afternoon. I told myself that I wasn't snooping, I was just retrieving documents that I had a right to see. When I arrived at my parents' house, Lily was in the living room, trying on her wedding dress. She looked beautiful, but I couldn't help but feel a twinge of sadness. She had no idea what was going on. "Look, Wendy," she said, twirling around. "Alexander's mother picked this out. It's real silk." I forced a smile. "It's beautiful, Lily." My mother was bustling around in the kitchen, happy to have me back in the fold. "I'll just go get the tax files from Dad's study," I said, casually. My mother didn't suspect a thing. "Good girl," she said. I closed the study door behind me and took a deep breath. The filing cabinet was locked, but I knew where my father kept the key in the pen cup behind the old, dried-out markers. I opened the top drawer and started looking through the old files. It was a mess of old bills, receipts, and tax returns. Then, in the bottom drawer, I found a brand new manila folder. I pulled it out and opened it. The first page was a loan application from the Riverdale Bank. My breath caught in my throat. There was my father's name as the primary borrower, and my name was listed as the co-borrower and guarantor. My old address, my social security number, all written in my father's handwriting. The signature line was blank, waiting for me. Underneath the application was a letter from the bank, dated a few weeks ago, requesting my signature to finalize a loan of $90,000. I stood there, stunned. The wedding was just a cover. They needed the money to pay off their debts. I took out my phone and photographed every page, front and back. Then, I put the folder back exactly where I found it and locked the cabinet. I walked out of the study, my hands shaking. I told my mother that I'd see her on Thursday and left. I drove to my office, where I felt safe. I spread the photos out on my desk and looked at them again. Two truths were clear: my parents were in desperate need of money, and they were willing to use me to get it. I called Jake. "I found it," I said. "It's worse than we thought. They're trying to get me to guarantee a $90,000 loan." He was silent for a moment. "Come home. We need to start planning our defense." Over the next few days, Jake and I worked tirelessly. He created a folder with all the evidence: the loan application, the bank letter, my credit freeze confirmation, and a detailed timeline of all the events. He also drafted a letter on his law firm's letterhead, stating that I had never authorized any loan and that any document signed under coercion would be void. We knew that my family was going to try to pressure me into signing the loan. They'd set up a family dinner, the perfect trap. But we were ready. A few days before the dinner, Lily came to my office. She was shaking, and I could tell that she was scared. "Mom says you're coming to dinner on Friday. She says you're going to fix everything," she said. "Fix what?" I asked. "The money, the wedding. Everything. You always fix it." I looked at her, feeling a pang of sadness. "Lily, I'm not paying for the wedding. I told them that weeks ago." Her face went pale. "Then who is?" It was the question she should have asked a long time ago. I almost told her everything, but I knew it was too soon. "Come to dinner on Friday. Sit with me, and whatever you hear, remember that I tried to warn you," I said. She left, looking more confused than ever. But at least she was starting to question things. The next day, Alexander called me. He asked if we could meet for coffee. I agreed. We met at our favorite diner, the same place where Jake and I had our first date. Alexander was a good man. He loved Lily, and I could see that he was worried. "I'll be honest with you, Wendy," he said. "My father is excited about investing in your dad's new business. But something doesn't feel right.